Proposition 18 amends California Constitution to permit 17-year-olds to vote in primary and special elections if they will turn 18 by the next general election and otherwise be eligible to vote. Legislative constitutional amendment. Plain language, allow 17-year-olds to vote if they'll be 18 by the next general election. In case you're just joining us, this is a part of a series. Check the description box below to find the complete playlist and also learn how you can earn your Election 2020 diploma. Now, our Prop 18 trivia question. A triple whammy for 3 possible points. What U.S. constitutional amendment gave 18-year-olds the right to vote? What U.S. constitutional amendment gave women the right to vote? What U.S. constitutional amendment gave blacks the right to vote? The answers coming shortly. The background. This is frankly a very simple and straightforward proposition. The legislative analyst provides a lot of ancillary information about voting and what an election is and election administration and registering to vote, blah, blah, blah. You can read pages 34 through 35 of the official voter information guide if you want to blather on about that. As for us, let's get to the point. There are primary elections and there are general elections. The primary election is held in the spring where voters determine which candidates will compete for office at the general election, and the general election is in November where voters determine who will actually win the election. Statewide ballot measures, or propositions like the ones you've been learning about in this playlist, can be voted on in either primary or general elections. Currently, you need to be at least 18 years old and a resident of California to vote. When you are 16 or 17, you can pre-register to vote, which makes it so that you are automatically registered when you turn 18. You can't vote if you're in jail or on parole, so get it straight, you little high school thugs. What does it do? This measure would allow eligible 17-year-olds who will be 18 years old by the November date of the next general election to vote. This means that these 17-year-olds could vote in any special election or primary election that occurs before the next general election. Because current state law allows registered voters to run for elected office, this measure would result in 17-year-olds who will turn 18 by the next general election to do so as well if they meet all other existing eligibility requirements for elective office. Basically, this measure could result in 17-year-olds being able to run for office. Take note of that if you plan to take the election test, because that question is on there.
You know, being a kid is okay. I want to go to prom and grad night and whatever, but what I'm most excited about is becoming an adult and being able to donate to the Darryl Johnson Show. My older brother did it and it was so much fun. It sounds like something that's not that cool, but once he did it, he got this special surge of amazingness that really changed his life forever. My favorite website is paypal.me/The Darryl Johnson Show. And my second favorite is patreon.com/The Darryl Johnson Show. It's so much fun. If you haven't donated yet, I don't even know why you are alive. My parents and I can't wait until I turn 18 so I could donate to the Darryl Johnson Show. Just try it. It's super fun and cool and awesome and exciting.
Fiscal impact. To get this proposition up and running, there would be a one-time cost in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to update existing voter registration systems and an ongoing few $100,000 to $1 million to add all the 17-year-olds to the existing process and mail all the materials and count all their stuff, whatever. So that's the deal on that. And now the answer to our trivia question. And again, if you are participating in an election party prep night, you can earn up to 3 points here. What U.S. constitutional amendment gave 18-year-olds the right to vote? The 26th Amendment, ratified in 1971. What U.S. constitutional amendment gave women the right to vote? That would be the 19th Amendment, ratified in 1919. And what U.S. constitutional amendment gave blacks the right to vote? That would be the 15th Amendment in 1870. All right, boys and girls, tally up your points on the 2020 election voting aid if you've requested your free copy. Otherwise, you can just keep track in your head if you like. From Yes on Prop 18. This important election reform will not only allow first-time voters to participate in the full election cycle, but also has the potential to boost youth participation in our elections. We need youth voices to be represented at the ballot box, allowing some 17-year-olds to vote in primary elections if, and only if, they will be 18 by the time of the general election is a simple way to amplify the voices of young voters throughout California and will lead to a more inclusive election process for our state overall. California is behind the curve when it comes to this issue. Nearly half of states in the US already allow 17-year-olds to participate in primaries and caucuses. If an individual plans to participate in the general election as a first-time voter, it is only reasonable that they be afforded the opportunity to shape the choices that appear on the general election ballot by participating in the primary. Prop 18 links this 17-year-old participation to the age of majority by requiring that the individual be 18 by the time of the general election. In the March 2020 primary, which saw the most votes in a California presidential primary ever, only 38% of eligible voters cast a ballot. We have a civic engagement problem, and we need to establish a culture of voting for future generations sooner than later. Voting in one election can increase the probability of voting in the next election by over 25%. Issues like climate crisis, student debt, healthcare, and our economic future will impact young people the most, and it is our responsibility to provide them with adequate opportunities to create lifelong voting habits. A vote for Prop 18 is a vote for our democracy. According to research conducted by the California Civic Engagement Project, in the 2020 primary election in California, youth voters, those aged between 18 and 24, made up 14.5% of the population eligible to vote. However, only 6% of those who actually voted in the election. Youth are extremely underrepresented in our electoral process, despite the fact that they are heavily impacted by the policies created by those elected. 17-year-olds already work and pay taxes, and they can enlist in the military. If young people at this age are volunteering to put their lives on the line for our country and contributing financially to society, they should be able to participate in a full election cycle the year they turn 18. Figuring out how to vote, where to vote, and what is on the ballot is a difficult first-time process. Giving young people time to learn this the year they turn 18 ensures a successful first voting experience. Expanding young people's opportunity to become civically engaged ensures our future generations will adopt voting habits early on and take them as they go to college, join the military, or join the workforce. Not only does research indicate that the youth population has the lowest turnout levels of any age demographic, but studies also show that voting is habit forming. Once an individual votes in an election, they are more likely to do so again. Early involvement in the electoral process for first-time voters should be a high priority for this reason. Proposition 18 is an opportunity to empower California's youngest voters and encourage them to become lifelong participants in the most fundamental act of democracy. Please support Proposition 18. From No on Prop 18. Vote no on Proposition 18. Many tax increases and bond debt measures are decided on primary and special election ballots. That's why adults should vote. 17-year-olds are not legally adults. Both the federal and California governments have set the age of legal responsibility at 18. In California, an individual even 1 day younger than 18 may not enter into a legal contract or even use a tanning salon. 17-year-olds cannot even participate in a school field trip without the permission slip signed by a parent or guardian. California law puts extra rules and restrictions on the driver's license of 16 and 17-year-olds because of concerns about maturity and judgment. The license restrictions disappear exactly on the 18th birthday, not before. California law reflects the scientific evidence that age-related brain development is connected to the ability to reason, analyze, and comprehend cause and effect. The agreed-upon age of reason, both statewide and nationally, is 18. Science affirms that the reasoning and logic portion of their brains is not biologically developed. 17-year-olds are captive audiences in schools. Voters deserve to hear all sides of an issue to make an informed choice. Most 17-year-olds are still in high school, dependent on teachers for grades and important recommendation letters vital to their future. They are a captive audience 5 days a week with a strong incentive to do whatever teachers and counselors recommend. California's primary ballot often includes school tax and bond measures for voter approval. Unlike adult voters, 17-year-olds who are still in high school are likely to hear only one side of these issues. For example, in 2019, the Los Angeles Unified School District engaged in an informational campaign to pass a proposed tax increase, Measure EE, in a special election. Schools posted huge banners on campus, handed out flyers and literature for students to take home, and even distributed sample social media posts in an effort to influence students and their families. If 17-year-olds are allowed to vote in primary and special elections, perhaps even filling out a mail-in ballot right in the classroom, these students could provide the margin to approve new debt and taxes that will greatly burden their parents and all taxpayers. Political participation is open to all. Voting is different. Everyone has a right to express an opinion, advocate on issues, organize like-minded people, and volunteer on campaigns. The right to vote, however, is reserved for citizens who are state residents, who are not felons in prison, and who are at least 18 years of age on election day. The statement that nearly half of the states allow 17-year-olds to vote in the primary is dishonest. Only 18 allow it, and their primaries are different than California's. Because of Propositions 13 and 218, Californians have the right to vote on tax proposals, which are often on the primary ballot. 17-year-olds have virtually no experience with earning a living and paying taxes. Real-life experience is vital for voting. The suggestion that it is only logical that 17-year-olds should vote in the primary if they are going to vote in the general is bad reasoning. Since California's primary has been moved to early March, Prop 18 would give high school minors just barely 17 the right to vote simply because they will turn 18 8 months later. Voting is a serious responsibility. In California elections, voters decide who will hold power to make and enforce laws, whether to approve new debt that taxpayers will have to pay, whether to raise taxes, and many other complex issues. Important decisions must be made by voters who are legally adults and not high school minors. So, no. Nope. Nopey noperson. We have enough doofuses in the voting booth already. The last thing we need is a mob of high schoolers voting on property taxes, criminal sentencing, and dialysis clinic operations. I think somebody is looking to add an easily manipulatable voting base to vote yes on a series of deceptively titled propositions. And why not an army of voters who have never owned a house, had a family, gone to college, owned a business, filed a tax return, or possibly not even had a job? Think back to when you were 17. Do you remember yourself being a person who should be voting on the issues we've been discussing here? I don't even think most 18-year-olds should be voting, but I don't see any legal basis to exclude them, so I wouldn't support that. But voting is serious stuff, and with our new increased adolescence period in Western society, this is just not a reliable voting bloc in my opinion. Here's an unpopular opinion. As it is, I think there are already too many people voting each election cycle that I think are more suited for the American Idol or America's Got Talent election cycle, but definitely not a public election. Speaking of, you can visit the link in the description after you finish this series if you want to take the test and find out if you're certified to vote in this election. Everyone who passes the test will receive a certificate of non-doofusness from the Darryl Johnson Show. Now, I hate to confess this to such an audience as yourself, but I remember the first election that I voted in, and I remember voting for candidates by whose name had the nicest flow. Yes, as sad as it is, long before the Darryl Johnson Show, I was a doofus in the voting booth. You always hear people going about saying, you have to vote, it doesn't matter who you vote for, just make your voice heard. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. We don't need more doofuses spreading their doofusness throughout the state electoral process. I always encourage people who don't know and don't have an interest to stay home and eat bonbons. You're not helping anything. We don't need to focus on the number of people showing up to the polls. We need to focus on getting people interested and educated on local, state, and federal issues. From there, it will naturally flow into increased turnout, except it will be the right kind of turnout. I get the argument that starting them off on the pathway to becoming active voters is good, but if anything, I might support it if they had a system where all of the 18-year-old and older ballots went into the square box on the table, and then all the 17-year-old ballots went in the circular bin behind the desk. Now, if you're listening and you're 17, I'm not necessarily talking about you because you are obviously researching and seeking out information if you're here. I'm directing this to your friend over there eating the laundry detergent who will be doing their election research on Snapchat or TikTok. We don't need that. Are there 17-year-olds that could handle this? I'm sure there are, but I don't think the percentage is where we need it to be. Thanks for playing, but no, that's why it's called Prop 18, because you gotta be 18. By the way, if you are 17, click the link in the description and take the Darryl Johnson Show 2020 election quiz after you watch the videos for the propositions. If you pass, I stand corrected. If you vote yes on Prop 18, you will be voting to allow 17-year-olds to vote so long as they will be 18 by the next general election. If you vote no on Prop 18, you are voting to keep it so that you must be 18 to register to vote. The Darryl Johnson Show says no on Proposition 18.